And in my playbook tonight, as if healthcare reform doesn't have enough problems. Now the gun lobby's getting in the act, trying to shoot it down. The Gun Owners of America organization is telling its members that the healthcare bill that we're considering in America will let President Obama take away their weapons. Let me bring in the executive director of that group, Larry Pratt. Mr. Pratt, explain your position on this. Do you really believe that if we pass healthcare reform in this country, that it's going to restrict gun ownership? I need an explanation on this one. Good to have you with us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on. There's two main concerns that we have with this healthcare legislation. The first is that for quite some time there's been a building of privacy invasion starting in 2007. Medical records were had to be computerized and sent to the FBI if they had anything to do with you might be a danger to self or others. No trial, no conviction, no due process. Just send the names over and away goes the right to keep and bear arms.
You think the database and all the information gathering would help law enforcement deny and laws help deny people getting guns?
Denying is not the problem. It's doing it without due process, without a trial, without any of those sorts of protections that a real criminal would have. And so we're treating people as if they were criminals.
Well, what if somebody's got a mental condition? I mean, would you want Mr. Hassan, after all he wrote, would you think it's okay for him to go in and buy a gun because he ended up shooting and killing a bunch of people and wounding another 40? I mean...
Well, I think instead of ignoring his jihadi tendencies, as the review board did and said, well, we don't have enough Muslims in the military, so we got to let him go through, I think the thing to do would have been, at a minimum, kick him out of the military and maybe go from there.
So you think that it would have been you have no problem with the guy who shot up Fort Hood and murdered people, allegedly. You think it's okay for him to own a gun after all the information that's come out against?
What we have a problem with is that that was a gun-free zone. It was a marvelous place. Like all the other mass murder scenes in our country were gun-free zones.
So Mr. Pratt, what's wrong with gun confiscation if we can keep a gun out of the hands of someone who has got some real mental issues that happen to come up through health care reform? Doesn't that make us safer? That doesn't mean that you can't, or I can't, or some other healthy person can't go out and get a firearm.
Do you have an aversion to putting people to trial before you take away their rights? Is that what it is? You just want to accuse?
I do believe that psychiatrists and psychologists should have the power to deny. You know, you shouldn't own a firearm. I mean, I believe
that's a dictatorial power.
No,
they
it's
use
not.
that
It's
in
a
Nazi
safety
Germany.
measure.
They use that in Soviet Union. They use it in Cuba.
No.
That doesn't have any place in America, where each defendant
has every place because the social mores of gun ownership, especially for handguns, has changed in this country. All right, your other claim is that the Senate health care bill would let government offer lower premiums to employees who bribe their employees to live healthier lifestyles.
That's one of the big buzzes about what's going on. They're going to go after fat people. And the way the National Institutes of Health is going, in spite of a ban on the same thing for the Centers for Disease Control, the National Institutes of Health is starting to once again renew the federal government's interest in guns and public health. And you can just see where this will go with a very anti-gun administration.
All right, Mr. Pratt, got to have you back. Appreciate your time today. Only in America, freedom of speech. Thank you for joining us.